deal with it.
And the other thing is it goes for 3.5 minutes.
Shut the front door.
Are we live?
I would watch that. I would watch that for 3.5 minutes.
Okay, we're live.
Okay.
We should probably tell people what we're doing. What's it called again?
ASMR?
ASMR.
There's
So,
like audio, sensory, something.
hi, welcome to the Department of Conversation. We are live from Queenstown at the Rees. And so we don't have our big screen and more technology, but I can probably do this. Jace, will that work?
Probably, yeah, that works.
That works?
Yeah, there you go.
We just started talking about ASMR. And we're having a great amount. And this is, okay, let's just give it a few seconds. This is a tortoise eating a kiwi fruit.
Oh, it's such a weird noise.
Isn't that crazy?
For our listeners that are still here, that's
Does that work?
That drills into your ears.
Oh, that is I've never understood those videos until watching that, because that is this real intense feeling. Because you know how they say that when you watch these videos, it does something to you.
It's like
I don't know.
It's like
it does
that.
something to you. I saw how you reacted.
I know, it was really like jittery.
Often people do that, like that sort of sound where they're like eating chocolate or you know, like that.
I've seen like
that's really maybe
I've seen like the whole kind of 50-year-old sultry woman going, and now I'm going to eat a banana or whatever. I don't know. I don't quite get that. Maybe we started this to let people know. We were talking about, I don't know how we were talking about YouTube, but I'm always weirded out because I get onto YouTube. That's like the first one of those I've ever watched. But always at the top of my feed, there's a fucking hamster eating cherries. And I'm like, where is this from? And we open up my feed and the third video down was a tortoise eating kiwi fruit.
Google hamster eating cherries now to try, and I want to watch
That's
that.
crazy.
Yeah, there's this really fantastic one that's called like Real Housewives ASMR or something, and somebody's got a fight from that reality TV show Real Housewives of somewhere, and they've whispered all the dialogue, and it sounds so ridiculous, but it's hilarious. It is so funny.
Well, that's where it started, didn't it, Jace? Didn't it start with people whispering? And
yeah.
They're like, I'm going to whisper. I bet you people are getting really...
We've all talked about it.
Yes.
Shame I'm not talking to you. And I'm talking Shut to your you. Fucking mouth.
I can't.
That's
it's
crazy.
So funny.
What do you reckon? I mean, I heard someone talking the other day about like being in their 30s or 40s and realizing they were afraid of heights. And they used that phrase, I went full lizard brain.
Oh,
because they froze and they could do nothing. I can't remember who it was. It was a celebrity or something. Oh, I know who it was. Guy who plays The Bourne Identity. Matt Damon.
Oh, Matt Damon.
Matt Damon. He was talking about it, that he'd done all these stunts and stuff, and he was always in a harness, but he went out onto a helicopter landing like on top of a building, and he goes, I went full lizard brain. And I'm just wondering about that whole lizard brain thing with this. What is it? Because to be honest, it doesn't, I don't know.
I just thought that clip was funny, but seeing the tortoise, that did something to my brain. Like I felt all tingly and gross. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, it really had it. Maybe it's the headphones. Maybe you have to really focus and listen to have it affect you.
They do say you should wear headphones with ASMR like that. It's very much like a audio thing. You definitely put headphones on and sort of like, to get that, like, because, to get the frequency response. And
the other thing, like, those clips are weird, but the weirdest clips are, is it called mukbang?
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, sorry, I'm really bad at explaining things, but it's people eating stuff.
Yeah.
And what is it called? It's like, it's a word, like maybe Korean or something, mukbang or something. But anyway, it's just people eating food, and it's so gross, but people love it, and I'm just totally revolted by it.
Mukbang?
Yes.
It's a Korean word for eating?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So
I watch this comedy show. I think it's on Comedy Central. I watch it on the internet. Like you watch everything, called Tosh.0.
Oh yeah.
Daniel Tosh, comedian. It's really just a clip show, but he is the most sarcastic, funniest guy doing it, sort of thing. And he had one of those guys on once, and I don't know if it's the same thing, but this guy ate like copious amounts.
Yeah,
it wasn't
that's
just
what
like,
they do.
oh,
yeah,
right.
yeah. So they have a whole spread of food, and I hate it. But like you with your hamster cherry
it always
eating,
pops up, does it?
Yeah, for me, and I loathe it because the other thing is they purposely eat really weird stuff. So often it will be like, one of them is this thing called like a duck something, but it's not a duck. It's like a, fuck, I'm just not explaining things well today, but it's like a shellfish type thing.
Oh yeah.
But it's called a duck something, and it's disgusting. It's like this big shell thing, but they bite into it and it squirts everywhere. And it just like, there's something about it that makes me think that humans are terrible, and it's probably good that we're all going to die by 20.
20 what?
What is it?
I don't know.
2021? 20, what's the, I thought there was a date.
Oh, that was 2012 or something, wasn't it? We've
No,
already died.
no, a new one, a climate change one.
Oh, come on. We've only just started the podcast.
Yeah,
We can't be dead within 2 years.
Yeah.
We've got to get to like Joe Rogan before we can die.
Speaking of,
So-
look, we've been going for like 6 minutes now.
On weird videos on YouTube. I could talk about weird
Which is
videos
what we do.
on YouTube.
I tell you what I like on YouTube. I go down rabbit holes. I love poker. I love Texas Hold'em. I said to Jace last night, let's go to the casino here in Queenstown, and I got some kind of change response. I don't know, some weird response. But
Said I was broke.
but I go down rabbit holes, and I've been down several of them. I went down a rabbit hole once, which was it's paintball. But it's like tactical paintball where they're using sniper rifles this big.
And you watch it?
Yeah, totally. Wow. And just watch it. And there was like one guy who had all the gear and he'd test the gear. It's professional paintball shooting, teams of 30 going through. And he has camera sights on the end of his guns. So you actually watch him shooting the paintballs and hitting other people.
Oh, I would not like that.
It's very, very cool.
I think technically that's airsoft.
Yes, that's probably what it is. Sorry.
Well,
no, it's not paintball because it's not paint. It's just pellets.
Yeah, it's little pellets.
Yeah.
Why
they
would
go
people want to
hardcore.
be hit by
And
those?
the other thing I watch, which I've talked about before on the podcast, is First Amendment audits. Love those.
What is that?
So First Amendment audit. People, I said this is where it's funny. We normally
And the rabbit hole begins.
we normally intersperse clips amongst this thing. The one day we come to Queenstown, and have we set a wide shot to see our view of the lake? Is we got no way to actually do it. But First Amendment audits are Americans who go to places, stand in public, and film private land or film government agencies. So they'll go outside a courthouse, stand on the sidewalk, and they'll film the courthouse. Wow. Or they'll go outside a police station or the FBI, or they'll go outside a business. And what they typically do is go to a business that has a contract with the government. So it's all about public money. And the First Amendment in America says freedom of the press. There's been rulings that say you can record public workers. I can't think of the word for that. People who get paid by the government.
Public servants.
Public servants in the course of their duty. And what happens is, what they're there to do is they're there to test how the people are going to respond. They're just being dicks. But they're here, and so they'll go and film the police, and then the police get really aggro with them and say, ask for ID and stuff. And then because of that, in fact, we were watching NWA's Straight Outta Compton last night, and we're watching the Rodney King video. And I said to Jace, the reason this thing doesn't happen so much anymore is everyone films everything.
Yeah, which you have to. Yeah, especially, if you're black in America, you have to do that, right?
And so these people then... There's a lot of people who have learned the law because of what these guys do. So the police will go, give me some ID. And they'll go, section 47.8 says, you need to either say I have committed a crime or about to commit a crime or are committing a crime for me to show you my ID. So no, I'm not showing you my ID. Wow. And they do this. And so they get into confrontations with these people. And some people say dick move sort of thing. But actually, it's really interesting just to watch. Because
it's
America
also
is
a way to use your privilege, right, to protect other people who really need those protections as well. I think it's a really good thing to do.
Yeah,
to be standing up and going, I'm going to do this on behalf of people. What's happening in the States is terrifying with how they're treating, migrant refugees, asylum seekers, and I can't handle that. They call them illegal aliens. It's so dehumanizing to call somebody an alien.
Haven't officially said 13 minutes in or whatever we are. Emily Wrights joins us. Hi, Emily.
Yeah.
So anyway, they what it does is it educates people.
Yeah.
I have to be honest. I think most YouTubers who do this do it because part of them is they like the confrontation. They're kind of dicks, and then they get enough followers and they can actually monetize and they actually make money off it. So then they get even more sort of pushing the boundary. But the flip side to it is, people now some people now understand what they do and don't have to do when the police rolls up to them.
Yeah.
Now, that may be a good or a bad thing, but at least it means people know what their rights are. So anyway, that's a rabbit hole I go down.
I saw something on that, like the other day, that's sort of like that, but different, where basically they said, this is what you do if you get stopped, roadside stop. You say, I don't ask questions. I don't answer questions. And then people, the videos are all like, all the videos of the cops saying, have a good day then, sir. And they walk off because they know that something to do with the Fifth Amendment, it's like, they're not allowed to incriminate themselves. And so the cop says that, they just say, I don't answer questions. It's like, what's your name? It's like, I don't answer questions. And okay, have a good day.
I have the right not to incriminate myself. And they say, am I being detained? And if they say you're being detained, they go, I want a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so these are what these guys do.
Actually, one of my first pieces of activism was printing off, we were in like a sort of anarchist group, and we were printing off guides to what to do if the cops turn up at your house for drug raids and stuff like that, and that they're not allowed to come into your house if they don't have a warrant and stuff like that. And we had numbers to call if you were like
before YouTube. So you were like the pre-YouTube First Amendment.
Yeah. We had a landline at one of the houses, and it was for people to answer, to help people who, particularly, Aborigines and people, gender minorities and stuff like that, who were most at risk of cops. Or people in Sydney who were homeless and stuff like that. They really needed that. They needed that support in a way that, certain other people, like a lot of us had enough safety in, being white, or, that we could actually do this work, and have the ability to do it, whereas others didn't.
Because the knowledge is quite an important thing of that. And I actually told Jace about a situation that happened to me the other day. And I mean, knowledge is a good thing. You can also use it in your advantage sometimes. Police pulled me over and I went through a yellow light. And they said, you went through a yellow light. And I said, I did go through a yellow light. And they said, why did you go through a yellow light? And I said, well, the road code says if I don't feel I can stop safely, then it's okay for me to go through. And I did not feel I could stop safely.
Yeah.
And because I knew that, I mean, whether I could or couldn't stop safely, I mean, because I think that's one part of the road code that's relative. And he said to me, well, we were 20 metres behind you and we could stop. And I was like, yeah, because you were 20 metres behind me. But you can't tell me how I felt, and I didn't feel I was safe to stop.
Yeah, I mean,
and that was the end of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because being in activism, you have, like, my viewers have a healthy distrust of police. Has always been my approach, and I've done a lot of advocacy work for people who've, been involved with police. In particular, have such a terrible record in New Zealand with how they treat Māori people. And my husband's Māori, he gets treated very differently than I do. And the times when we've needed police, we've been treated really badly, you know. And so it's fascinating to me now as a parent trying to talk to my kids about cops, because police come to kindies and stuff to be like your friendly neighbourhood officer. And how do you say to kids, oh, your mum and dad, we don't really like cops.
Because I wonder from a parenting point of view, you also don't want the kids to have such a distrust for police.
That they wouldn't go to them.
Yeah, that if they were in public and something happened. Then,
if they get lost, I want them to go to police.
Yeah.
But also what happens if my kid grows up and they're trans, or being a Māori kid. I mean, my kids have... they're white passing, so, a lot of people don't realise that they're Māori. But yeah, I think it's just kind of like trying to say to them, trust the police, but also remember that you need to use your white passing privilege and your position in the community to protect your friends who will not be treated so well by police.
I wonder if, and I'm thinking about when police could be dicks towards kids, and it feels to me that under 13, police are probably completely safe for kids
if you're white.
Over 13.
Yeah.
But
also if you're white, there's been stories about, the police in their police car chasing Māori kids through the river. Those kids could have died. And if they were white kids, it would have been all over the news. It's a real problem, and it's also an open problem in New Zealand, but we don't talk about it. Police have come out and said that there is unconscious bias, or I think of it more as conscious bias, but whatever, towards Māori people, and also gender minorities. That's the whole thing in Auckland about cops wanting to wear the uniform in the Pride Parade, and it's like queer groups saying, we would love you to be part of the parade, but you can't wear your uniform because we have people who've been victimised by you and your uniform. And the cops were like, nah, fuck you. We wear our uniform, or, you know, and they just fucking shattered Pride in their shitty response to that. And all they were asked to do was put on a fucking T-shirt. Like, how's that for, like, that chasing that rainbow dollar and trying to be like, oh yeah, we're down with queer people when it suits our reputation and our perception.
Being someone who you know, I talk about myself because of my Celtic roots. I'm so white, I'm almost pale blue, you know.
Yeah.
Never really experienced that, but completely aware of, you know, bias and stuff that's out there, working as a talkback host for 10 years and knowing all the stats. And, you know, some would say for a long time I was the lone voice on ZB who was kind of going, you know, this is not how really the rest of the world sees the thing.
Yeah.
Even though it's almost like it's not part of the group, but you can be an advocate in that area. You can just mention that. I remember stories about, you know, exactly the same crime, exactly the same history, exactly the same backup between two kids. Māori kid would get this punishment, white kid would get left off.
100%, yeah. And I mean, I had a really wild teenage years and involved, you know, with the police.
In New Zealand and Australia?
Both. Okay. So I was actually born on the Gold Coast, and I grew up in Sydney, but moved here quite young and kind of went back and forth a bit. But I definitely had involvement with the cops and my behaviour and stuff like that. And I was always let off for things and got away with things. And to, you know, people need to talk about that how if you're white you can do this and that and get away with it, and you have to use I just am a firm believer in using your privilege,
so using the cards you dealt.
Actually trying to make it like to boost the voices of people who don't have the same platforms as you. Like, there's so much unearned things that I get as a white person, and that has really been shown to me growing up in a country as racist as Australia, and then coming to New Zealand and having a Māori husband and being you know, having this Māori family. It's been a real ongoing learning, and will be for my whole life, because I think we all need to recognise that we're all racist, and we have to be constantly unpacking the assumptions we make about each other and what we're doing. I still make mistakes and say things and get pulled up, and this whole thing at the moment on call out culture, you know, Barack Obama having a big cry about how mean call out culture is.
He was talking that speech he was talking about being woke and the council culture. That one?
Yeah. And this whole, you know, thing of be nice to people, you know, be civil. And Ellen DeGeneres' photo with the warmonger.
He's
a fucking war criminal. And all these people were sharing it going, how nice. And I was like, sorry to
interrupt you. Did you see, I think it was Seth Meyer, maybe it wasn't Seth Meyer, one of the late night hosts, one of the more cutting ones, did a very funny bit. Oh, maybe it was Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. They did a very funny bit when they were talking about all the despots out there that have kind of come and gone. And then the tagline was, but they all went to a baseball game with Ellen. They had like the main show with Osama and all these people.
I love it.
At the baseball with Ellen.
Yeah. But that call-out culture, like call-outs terrify people. But I've had heaps of call-outs, and they've all been incredible learning experiences.
Can you give us an example?
Oh, yeah. A couple of years ago, I wrote a piece about Idris Elba, just basically how I really wanted to bang him.
Yeah.
And there was this big essay in the Pantograph Punch about my review, saying that as a white woman, I was engaging in this, like, you know, I wasn't recognising the way that black men are fetishised and stuff like that. And I needed to take that into consideration.
So if it had been Jake Gyllenhaal, that would have been okay?
Yeah, well, it is, because it's a difference around, you know, there were things that it just had never occurred to me that got explained to me around, you know, like I'd made a joke about this photo that Idris Elba had shared with a mic that made it look like he had a really big dick. And I had shared it, and made a comment about, you know, him having a massive dick or whatever. And they were talking about the history of how black men have been fetishized by white women and, you know, reduced to having a big dick and like jungle fever fantasies and stuff. And, you know, that can happen. And I had a lot of people really earnestly saying to me, you shouldn't have apologized and you blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I learned so much from that experience. And did it suck? Yeah. Did I cry heaps and feel awful and hate myself for a long time over it? Like,
really?
Yeah, but at the same time, I learned so much, and it's important to keep learning and you can, when somebody calls you out, you can turn it into this thing where it's all about you, like, oh, this is so mean of you, and now I hate myself and I can't do anything right. And it's like that in itself is a really shitty response to somebody caring about you enough to say, hey, you can do better. I know you can do better than this, and this is what you need to learn. Or even just saying, you may not know this, but you know, that matters to me. And I have other times where, you know, just the other day I got I did an event and got you know, someone came up to me and said, oh, you use some really cis-centric language, which means like cisgender. And it was at a sex toy party, so we're literally talking about genitals, like it matters, the language you use. And I just was like so grateful that somebody gave a shit enough to come and talk to me about that. And it's brave. If you're like a transgender person coming up to a cisgender person and saying, hey, the way you spoke really, it hurt my feelings, that's brave. And then like, and something like that happens on Twitter and it's just like, fuck you, die, you know, and you're just like, somebody cares about you enough to try and help you be a better person. Like, stop being a fucking dick about it. Stop making it all about you. Do
you think there's a natural progression in all these conversations, which is the pendulum swing? And do you think that's like a good thing? Like people would say that the Idris Elba one, for example, that for so long black men have been fetishized, that there's now a pendulum swing the other way where I think maybe an easier way. Okay, here's a better example. It's funny talking about Alan twice.
Can I drink?
You can drink. You can drink. You can smoke. You can do.
I'm not going to upset the microphone.
We can go and raid the minibar, and you can really drink.
It's like ASMR because you can.
That's quite good, actually.
Yeah, well, the ice cubes. That's ASMR. There you go.
A better example. Funny. I don't think I've ever talked about Alan on this podcast in 50 episodes, but now I'm going to do it twice in one. Is I saw a clip of Alan the other day. Again, we're going to YouTube if we're going to do it. If you were to put in Jace, probably Alan male strippers. And male strippers, male dancers were on her show up in the crowd dancing and stuff, literally picking up a woman wrapped around. And I was thinking, like, fuck, if that was James Corden and it was a female stripper and a male guy going, woo!
Oh, yes.
And I was thinking, gosh, it's interesting how the kind of pendulum swing, like,
but there's a reason for that.
Yeah, society in general goes, oh, that's just a bit of fun. And they'd go, that's filthy porn. And I wonder with a lot of these things, the transgender conversation is interesting as one. Maybe, and I don't speak to this from personal knowledge because I'm not. That at some stage when the pendulum lands in the middle, it's a very clunky way I'm trying to put it. That'll be society operating in the best it can. And that example of Ellen being up here with strippers, you know, dancing and stuff.
This idea around why is it okay for Ellen to have strippers and not James Corden or whatever, this is something that comes up for me a lot. People are like, oh, how can you call yourself a feminist when you write about wanting to fuck Alexander Skarsgård? And
is that the guy from It?
No, that's Bill Skarsgård.
Oh, okay,
but equally, I'd give him a go too.
Not with that smile, though.
Not dressed up as that. I don't have some fucking clown fetish. But yeah, like I get all the time, oh, how can you call yourself a feminist when you objectify men? And whenever I write these things, men get very angry and send me very vicious stuff. And after the Tarzan review I did went viral, I hate that term. It sounds so wanky. But anyway, I just got screeds of hate from men who were furious that like a woman was just openly talking about sex and desire and it wasn't in service to men.
Right. It's for your own
Yeah, it was-
what you wanted for your reason at your time, at your control.
And when that happened, I was really like, fuck, I need to do more of this. Like, I really had this thought of women love this and men hate it. And not all men, obviously, but, you know, it really was powerful to me that actually in 2019, it's still a big deal when women talk about sex and sexuality in a way.
Was this pre-Me Too or during?
Maybe pre-ish. Yeah, or around the time of Me Too. It wasn't that long ago, a couple of years ago, but I still get people yelling out Tarzan at me in the street, which is awkward when I'm out with my mother-in-law. And but, you know, I got these men saying, oh, if I wrote this about a woman, I'd never get away with it. And it's like, yes, you fucking do. You get away with that every single day. Every day you get away with like catcalling us and being a fucking asshole and porn and brutal porn that now I can't even watch porn because I'm so afraid of my kids seeing anything, you know, like it's such a, oops, sorry. And I'm like, the whole internet is men talking about women that way. My whole inbox is men talking about me that way. And so I'm like, you do get away with it, and what you're doing isn't a celebration of women in the way I'm writing
it's
about.
Like a gratification of men.
Yes. Yeah. And when I'm writing about, I take my thirst pieces, as I call them, very seriously because they're a celebration of being a woman and having desire and again, that desire not being in service to somebody else, just for you. It's just yours, and you get to be smutty and be all the things that society tells you women aren't allowed to be.
For sure.
And so that's why I'm kind of like, that's why it's different.
I was watching a clip online with the amazing Jermaine Greer the other day, and she spat some truth that I didn't know at all, being educated. She was talking about, you know, obviously second wave feminist, you know, one of the, I guess, biggest names in that movement sort of thing. But she was talking about the sort of, she didn't use the word male privilege, but she was talking about how women have been in society struggling for so long. And she mentioned some stuff where I was just like, holy crap, I never knew that. She mentioned that women die more often of heart attacks because the medical fraternity is trained to identify how a man has a heart attack. Yeah. So that's how they see it. Yeah. She talked about seats on airplanes being designed for men. They're more, you know, these actual physical things. And I was just like, you know, when I say I can academically understand, you know, a lot of the social sort of things and the patriarchal issue to do with dominance and that sort of thing. But she was linking it into actually real world stuff, like the patriarchy being involved in women dying more commonly of heart attacks than men because the medical fraternity don't see the heart attack response in women.
I think it was also
the same as men.
I think I remember actually reading the article myself, and I think with the heart attack one is because the symptoms are not less obvious; they're just as obvious, but they can be attributed to other women problems.
Yeah, and I mean the thing with,
and so they just go, oh, you've just got lady problems, not necessarily like lady problems as in what most woke men
literally lady problems.
Like, not literally lady problems, but like as in like, you know, not like menstrual cramps or something like that. But I think there is some issues with like, oh, you're just being hysterical, or you're just being 100%. Sort of they're writing off that real kind of classic 1950s housewife. Oh, you're just being hysterical.
Totally, and
there's things and they write them off to that, and so they go home, take an ibuprofen, and lie down. Yeah,
there's so much research and money put into like erectile dysfunction or impotence, which is really important. That should be addressed. But you've got women with endometriosis, which is, you know, constant pain, surgeries and everything. And there's fuck all look into it. Like women go years and years with endometriosis being told by male doctors, oh, you've just got, that's what periods are. Like, how the fuck would you know?
Well, it's like in America. You know? In America, a lot of the health plans will cover, you know, erectile dysfunction issues like Cialis and all that kind of stuff. But they push to say, well, we're a Catholic organisation, so we're not going to do the pill. But we'll do Viagra. But we're not going to do the pill.
Exactly, and it's like they're saying that, you know, we don't want to interfere with the process unless some guy can't, you know. Yeah. And I don't want to joke about erectile dysfunction. It has a terrible impact on men, but at the same time, you're just kind of like, you're putting money into boners, and I can't even get, they've just funded in New Zealand the Marina, which is, I always have this desire to roll the tongue, but it's not a Māori word, it's Marina.
Pronunciation.
Yeah. And so the Marina has just been funded, and it's like an IUD, and it costs a lot of money. Right. And until now, you had to pay out of pocket for it, and it was a couple of $100 depending on where you went. And so to have that funded now is incredible. But it's 2019, and we only just funded long-acting contraception for women in New Zealand. That's a big deal.
This is kind of, I am aware that this is kind of a dumb question I'm about to ask, but I'm throwing it to the whānau. Do you think in society, hey, welcome to the show. We haven't talked about your book. We're just talking about whatever. This is a rant in the light. That's what we're doing now. Do you think, with that very clunky example of the pendulum and that kind of stuff, do you think that there is a realistic meeting in the middle somewhere? Like actually a functioning society where we kind of go, oh, yeah, that side's fair enough. Oh, yeah, that side's fair enough. Oh, I'll give up that and you'll give up that and I'll win here and you'll win. And is that even a possibility?
No, and I don't think we want that, personally. I think of it a lot as being like what Trump said about the is it Charlottesville?
Good people on both sides?
Yeah, good people on both sides. Like, this is the whole thing with, you see... trans exclusive radical feminists on Twitter and things like that.
Well, not very much. You don't see them on Twitter for long.
Yeah, exactly. And but their view is exactly that in a way, because they're like, why can't we just have our casual bigotry and you have your existing as a trans person and we just be friends about it? And it's like, you cannot, it's that famous quote by, I think, James Baldwin, that is, if you deny my, I'm so hungover I can't actually, but it's like, if you deny my existence or you're complicit in my oppression, right, we can't meet in the middle, kind of thing. And I think we have this thing where we go, being a racist or being obsessed with the genitals of somebody to the point that you don't think they should be able to use a public bathroom unless you inspect whether they have a penis or not. We put that and say, we act like that's the same thing as me saying I like coffee and you like tea, let's be friends.
Yeah, I don't like tea.
No, yeah, I don't like tea. It tastes like dirt water. But like that tea. Is and we can be friends.
No, we can't. We're done.
Yeah. But they try and tie it up in this pretty bow that it's just, we're just different. So, we have different views, and it's like, no, your views.
Okay, so let's go somewhere with this. And this is probably something we'll disagree on, right?
Yeah,
so
and we should.
Hopefully we won't. This won't be the end of the podcast. I think a really good way of talking about this is trans women in sports.
Yeah.
We had a couple of academics on a few weeks ago showing the biology of a male anatomy versus female, and they put forward the research that there is an advantage for a trans woman to compete in lifting, power sports and speed sports against cisgender women. And I was thinking, well, is it that we now go fully accept, fully immersion in every area and acknowledge that there might be an advantage, or is it that we try and make it so there's not an advantage by excluding, and I'll use that term bluntly, trans women from competing in elite sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a conversation where it's interesting that we focus so much on trans women in this area, because if you look at like Michael Phelps and the studies on his body, he's a fucking superhuman.
Well, we talked about that. We talked about Caster Semenya, and they're making Caster Semenya drop her testosterone levels. I think that's wrong. Yeah. Because, and that's the exact example I gave. She has a naturally born advantage, just like Michael Phelps apparently produces less lactic acid. So he has a naturally born advantage. I don't think that they should make Caster Semenya drop her testosterone, because that's quote unquote natural, whatever the fuck natural means in this day. But it was born, but there's a difference. I think there's a difference with that.
See, this is the interesting thing. Because
I feel like I'm about to be educated.
Yeah, you say it's the way she was born.
Yeah.
trans people are born trans.
Yep.
So you have to come from this place of believing that trans people make a choice about whether they're trans or not, to believe that it's not a natural, to believe it's not natural, to believe that a powerlifter, a trans woman powerlifter
Yep.
is somehow different to Caster Semenya, is to believe that she wasn't born
that's
trans
interesting.
and she's not a woman.
That's interesting.
And, you know, I think sometimes, like with trans exclusionary feminists, they often will take this approach of believing that men are dressing up as women
sure.
and calling themselves trans so they can molest children and in public bathrooms, and
Yep.
so they can, I mean, as if cisgender men don't fucking do that all the time.
Of
There was
course.
just a case in Sydney about it, but that's somehow, you know, why would men go through the trouble of a transition to sexually abuse a child when they do that as cisgender men? But it's the same with sport. You have to truly believe that a man decided, I can't compete at this level, so or you know, a woman decided, so I'm going to transition and live my life this way.
No,
And
I
it's
don't think that's quite it, because
so
that,
far-fetched.
yeah, because I agree that I don't think quote unquote men are going to transition so they can be world champions. I don't think that's ever a reason. I completely accept and agree that being transgender is completely
something you're
I was
born.
going to say the norm. These words get so lost sometimes.
But like, if you believe that you're born this way,
Yep.
in the same way that you're born with a sexuality,
Yep.
if you believe that you're born with a gender, then a trans woman who is an athlete is no different to Caster Semenya or Michael Phelps.
That's the point that's really interesting. I find that really interesting about so what you're saying is, if someone was going to be consistent, they'd have to want to reduce Caster Semenya's testosterone as well as say no trans woman in the league. That would be the consistent position.
Yeah, and also it would mean that you are choosing to deny a part of the population the ability to compete or be part of sport. So where does that start? Do we say to a trans child who's 7 years old, you can't play rugby? And if we're going to let that child play rugby or let them start powerlifting as a teenager, even if they're trans, then how come we're going to do that but then say, train and train and train, but when you get to 25 and you get to Olympic level, fuck off because you're trans?
What about this situation that's happening in America at the moment, your opinion on in collegiate sport, because they're teenagers still, not going through hormone reduction, not reducing testosterone, racing against cisgender women? I mean, there's these examples about this girl made an article that she finished 6th and the first 2 were transgender females, and if she had finished 4th, she would have got a $250,000 scholarship to this. What do you think about all that stuff?
I think that she needs to grow the fuck up and realise that this is life. Be better, work harder. You know, they didn't. I saw that girl and I just thought, fuck, you need your parents to sit down with you and explain the fucking world with your white privilege and all that. She's going through life going, I deserve this, that and that. You got beaten by 4 people or something. And you see this all the time in the Olympics. These girls who cry, and they're always white, they're always coming through from a privileged background, wealthy, you know, and it's like, you've had every fucking advantage and you still couldn't do it. Grow up.
Well, they haven't had every advantage in sport though.
Well, what? They had parents who maybe didn't have both parents working, so could be driven out for hours to go. They had the money to do tutoring, training. But those things matter.
But if we were saying that, if you look at things like, I mean, I guess America's more obvious, but you know, basketball, NFL dominated 90-10 of black athletes to white athletes. So obviously, what does that mean? That the black athletes are so far advanced that they overcome white privilege to compete in sports? Well,
I mean, I think that the way it's looking at it from a position of black families are all poor or something, which is untrue from a start. But the thing is, white privilege isn't about saying I don't have any hardship or I haven't grown up in a, you know, grown up poor or anything like that. It's just saying that the way that you move through life has less barriers. You know, and the thing that you often see, and like, I don't know a huge amount about sport in the US, so I might be speaking a little bit out of turn, but the way that I understand it is that often scouts will come and take these young men and bring them to another place. So they actually almost get to inherit this through sport. They get to inherit less barriers in that way because they're transplanted into, you know, often being billeted with families like the coach and stuff like that. So I think all of those factors are part of it. And, you know, intersectionality, that type of feminism, which is looking at all those things, how are the ways that my life has benefited from the way that I just innately am. That's always going, there are so many complexities in this and we don't know. And I think sometimes we have this desire in life, and certainly I have the personality that wants this, where we just say, this is okay, this isn't. And it's kind of like, no, it's super complex. But there's some things that I just really believe are quite black and white. And a lot of that is around bigotry. And, you know, transphobia at the moment is such a massive issue. And, you know, I have a lot of trans friends. I have a stake in the game in that sense.
Sure.
But also I have children who at the moment are cisgender or whatever. But if at any point their genders might be different, or it's their friends, or, you know, it's very hard to say while people are having sort of theoretical conversations about, is this all right, or what if a trans person does this, to just kind of slide underneath that they're killing themselves every day. Like, there's no other group.
At a rate 10 times?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also no other group, minority group, that is murdered at a rate that and especially trans women of colour.
Do those numbers pan out in New Zealand like they do internationally?
They do.
Right.
And you know, there's this savagery around the debate, which just blows my mind, because they had this list of women who were killed in New Zealand, right? And it included some trans women. And trans exclusionary feminists on Twitter actually came in and went, that man shouldn't be on that list. And it's like, fuck, that's brutal. Where do you get to in a place in your life where you're like, this person who was murdered doesn't get to be on this list or something? I just, it's so mind-blowingly cruel, the debate, the fact that it's a debate. And I just really feel like my kids, when they grow up, are going to turn to me one day and be like, how fucked up was it that we believed that trans women weren't women, or that we believed gender was this binary thing that you can't, you know, like, I just think, and I'm not at all suggesting anything you've said is in that vein or anything. I just find it really fascinating that we talk endlessly online about this one trans athlete or something like that, and just literally never talk about the murder rate or the, you know, and also the bigger picture of what it means if we say, you know, if we go down the rabbit hole of where trans exclusionary people want to go, transphobes, where they want to go, it's basically like it's checking people's genitals before they go to groups or into bathrooms and all that, and it's like, it's fucking weird.
Do you think
like,
that
it's
there's
weird.
Do you think that there's someone there is, I mean it sounds like what you're saying with bigotry, there is no middle ground. That's sort of, it sounds like what you've said, but
well, it's kind of like going, oh, you know, I'm not racist, I have
an Asian friend.
Yeah. Or just going like, I really like black people, not Asians though. You know, like that. What is the common, like, where's the middle ground on bigotry? We're like, oh, you're allowed 0.5% bigotry. I wonder,
but when you say before that we're all racist, that surely means we're all bigoted as well.
Yeah, totally.
So we are allowed 0.4. We are, whether we're allowed it or not, we've got it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got it. But it's not in a matter of allowing it. It's about your work to unpack, your... One of the things I've always thought is the first thing that comes into your head.
Yeah.
You know, you should unpack that and think about the second thing that comes after. And
so
that's okay.
If the person cuts you off, if your first thought is bloody Asians, as was often said, certainly years have gone by.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's, I mean, you could say the same for ageism, if it's bloody old person or bloody whatever, rather than just bloody hell, that would be a different reaction.
Yeah, it's going, bloody Asians or whatever. And then your next thought being, why did I think that? Why did I go to this place?
Just so you know.
I'd like to just, for the record, to say that I must be really woke because I now just say bloody tourists. So I'm just xenophobic rather than racist.
I was about to say, what we're going to do is Emily writes is with us. We'll clip that bit with you saying bloody Asians, and we'll do something with that. Okay, Jace?
Oh, stop.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Oh, it'll be on Twitter. Emily writes racist.
Look, here's something I'd like to talk to you about.
I want to say,
You
though,
go.
just quickly, because this is such a fascinating conversation. Ageism is a really big deal because that's been my difficult
Okay,
one
Boomer.
Yeah, literally, right? And I love Okay Boomer because it's not about age.
Until
it's
it gets said to me, look. Let me just say, I'm Gen
called
X.
a boomer
I'm Gen
yesterday.
X. I'm not a boomer. Did you really?
Yeah.
Fuck
But the
that.
thing was, at first, I was like, fuck you, I'm 34, you fucking... But my next thought was, Okay Boomer as a term or whatever is about saying, I don't want to hear about your unchecked, the way that you won't... to me, that's what it means.
It's saying you don't understand. You have unchecked privilege, and you haven't. You are arguing as if you have. You don't have that privilege.
Let me give you a really
that's
interesting.
what I think it's meant to be.
I
that's
think
exactly
then
what
it's
it is.
turned
Because that's what
into-
Chloe. That's how Chloe. She used it. She's gone viral using that word again.
I
with
think-
and the parliamentary because she used it. Did you see that the clip?
I just have been
and-
so busy working. I
so
haven't had a
she
chance
3
to
days
see-
ago.
Yeah.
Oh, good on her! I love her.
She was talking, and somebody probably like one of the white guys from Nationals interjected as they do, and just like, okay, Boomer.
Perfect.
And then just kept on talking, and that went,
Okay Boomer.
internationally viral.
Yeah, do go international. But we've got I noticed on obviously we're based in Dunedin, we've got a Dunedin News Facebook page which has got like 50,000 people, and there is a particular Dunedin City Councillor who just fucking floods it with bullshit. All his own. And one of the things he put up the other day was something like, it had a photo of North Dunedin where the students are. The streets were filthy. Fair enough. You shouldn't do that. Let's just make it. You shouldn't do that. Don't give someone else a job to clean up your shit. But it was like, all the boomers are out talking about these filthy animals, da-da-da-da. So I just put up, and I think other people have done it as well, an article from the ODT that went, Otago University brings $1 billion into the city. So I kind of made the point to the council. I was like, maybe you could take a little bit of the money out from the $1 billion plus these guys bring in and clean up the street. Not implying it's okay.
No, I agree with you.
But the number of okay boomers that were in that feed, there were a lot of them.
And someone said to me the other day, okay, Boomer, because I was bitching about fireworks. And and personally, I don't think that's a fair use of okay, Boomer.
I think it's a very meta use of okay, Boomer, in that it's sort of like using okay, Boomer as an okay, Boomer joke against yourself sort of thing. It's sort of like saying, it's kind of like making fun of you, like tongue in cheek.
Well, the irony is the boomers aren't against the fireworks. They're the ones going, let's not ban them. So that's actually...
This is my childhood you're trying to ruin. And, but the thing was, my first reaction was like, fuck you, I'm 34. But then I was thinking about... okay, Boomer, and how I didn't like it when someone said it to me.
Yeah.
But then I thought my whole argument about okay, Boomer is it's not about age. So why should I think that it was, so that's, I guess, a real example of how I attempt.
Can you be a self-identified boomer? Would anybody even want to self-identify as a boomer? I don't know.
Are you saying like if you realise you've done something that's a bit in that, not that you are a boomer, but that's that, and you kind of go, oh shit, I'm being a boomer.
Right.
I think if you're starting to have a conversation about your rental house portfolio with your 30-something friends who are also wealthy, that's
you're
when
a
you can
boomer.
go, then you are a boomer, no matter what.
So now boomer has become a state of mind, basically.
Yeah, I love it.
I actually I went into the the rabbit holes looking at comments on those posts looking for the boomers to be getting all angry, and I saw actually a really great rebuttal, and I thought if I said okay boomer and they came back with that, I would actually be shut down. It was a really great clip. It was like they just said okay renter. I was like, that is a good clap back, actually.
It's not bad.
That's savage. That is savage because there's no comeback from that. I couldn't think of one. I
savage.
could not think of a comeback from that because,
But, ageism has been my thing that I really struggle with because of the boomer state of mind or whatever. I've really had to check over the last probably 2 years or so how I talk about old people and elderly people without recognising that they're a vulnerable group just because of my anger and frustration at boomers, like the boomer mentality.
What's your anger and frustration about the boomers?
Housing inequality, climate change. Fuck, the list is endless. Right. But one of the things, I turned that frustration into not recognising that elderly people are actually a really vulnerable group as well, and that there are many boomers who are, you know, really struggling and working very hard with many other people of different generations. And I kind of had this judgment as a group, and particularly that kind of old white men, because all of my interactions with old white men had been so fucking miserable that I really did have this picture of old white men as being like, oh fuck that, I'm not going there, like with those people. It was
literally your Facebook wallpaper, that cartoon with all the white men around you telling you what to do.
And that is kind of, but I had to really start interrogating my thought process around that, because it was actually turning into, for me, I was becoming quite ageist and not recognising the vulnerability of elderly people, the way that climate change impacts many different, like, older people as well. And I was just kind of going, oh, you caused it, fuck you. And, you know, like this whole, it's been a real and an ongoing process for me, recognising how I talk about and think about elderly people. Like I've written columns where I've kind of poked fun at elderly people, and you know, in the way that great grandmothers and stuff would talk to me and say, you know, I had 15 children and I never complained, loved every second, never made a fuss. You know, I still think that trope is really funny, but
and bullshit.
Yeah. I mean,
complete. Never complained.
Yeah, because never made a fuss. Maybe never, not like mothers these days.
Maybe never made a fuss because you're scared about getting the backhand from your husband. Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure internally there was a lot of fuss going on.
Yeah, so it's like, I guess my thing that I'm working on at the moment is trying to work out how I can talk about those things and make it funny and a thing we can all enjoy, but also have grandparents read that and go, oh, I get it. I get that I shouldn't say
so
every day was a blessing.
It's interesting. This is a good time to bring this up, I think. I'm coming back to what we've talked about because I'm interested in some of the words we've used, like racism and ageism. I wonder, and when I had these academics and talking about, you know, it was a medical ethicist, someone I can't remember. She was a bioethicist and a physiologist talking about that. And the thing I came to a conclusion at the end of it is, I reckon that we're in a society right now where we're on a massive evolution of language. Like, because, for example, the word racist, I think is an interesting word. Because the definition, as I understand it, of the word racist is, I'm better than you, my race is better than you, I'm better than you purely based on the colour of my skin, nothing else. By that was what racism is. I'm better than you because of the colour of my skin. You are lesser than me because of the colour of your skin. So I think we're using the word racist today, and it doesn't encompass just that. And I'm not saying that means
structures and oppression and wider.
And I wonder if a bunch of the conflict in society at the moment is coming around a really massive time of movement in language. The way racism is used today, the way maybe ageism, but whatever, is not how it was used 10, 15, 20, especially 50 years ago, talking about boomers. And we're coming up against that kind of, and we probably always have, but that generational impact where, you know, a millennial will say fucking racist and a boomer will say, no, I don't think any less of that group of people. And it's this pendulum we talked about before. I wonder if until we naturally, and I wonder if that's when, and I know you'll hate the name, but the guys like Jordan Peterson who are pushing back on being forced to use a certain language. I know it's bigger than that.
They lose their mind about calling, like, cisgender. They just cry about it for days, the idea of occasionally saying you're born the same gender. But I
wonder if that's that conversation, forget him, but that conversation has got such a lot of traction, meaning interaction at the moment, because one group is using language completely differently from another group. So we're in the middle of this evolution of language, and until maybe we sort out what the word racist or what the word transphobe or what, because phobe implies phobia implies fear.
Yeah.
And someone goes, I'm not scared of transgender people.
I just don't like them.
or whatever it is.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I do. I totally know what you mean, and because it's like if you say to somebody that was a racist thing you said, people will just die about it. Just like, how could you ever think I'm racist? I know a Maori person or Maori, and it's just. And it's the same with transphobia. If you say that's a really transphobic position to take. I don't. I'm fine with trans people. I just, and it's like, no, I'm not telling you that you are an irredeemable fuckwit who should go kill yourself. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the language that you have used, we are learning heaps about how we're using language, how we're acting,
the
positions
learning,
we take.
Because it's changing.
It as a learning position. Like, nobody's saying to you, you're the worst fucking person, set yourself on fire. When they say, they're in my inbox saying that. But if someone says to you what you said or the position you took was racist or transphobic, the automatic reaction is to go, no, how dare you, I'm a good person, blah, blah, whatever. Like, they're not voicing I'm a good person, but that's the thing that rubs up against them. Don't say racists are bad people and I'm not a bad person. Yeah. That's the thought process, right? But the thing is, what if you went, that person is not telling me I'm a bad person. That person's not telling me I'm irredeemable and I'm worthless. That person is just saying, you may not know this, but here I'm taking my time to explain to you why this is a thing.
Do you think one of the problems in this communication is person A, who is being told they've said something transphobic, racist, ageist, whatever, from person B, is person A might also be going, well, hang on, why have you got all the answers? I mean, you 33-year-old millennial, so I'm a 55-year-old. Boom would be more like 60s, wouldn't it? Whatever.
You're Gen X, aren't you?
I was talking about me. I'm the person that they're talking to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm mid-40s.
I was like, fuck, you look great for 55.
Maybe I should just stick with it.
Don't get that Brussian guy that you saw last time on TV.
Yeah, I wouldn't have talked to you if you were a boomer.
My 10-year-old has seen that Just for Men brush. And apparently you can just brush the grey away. And she's like, Dad, can we get that? And I'm like, yeah, you can get it if you want. She wants to have a play. She wants to play dress-ups.
I love it.
What was I saying? I forgot what I was saying.
The idea that the person saying to it thinks, who are you to say it?
And I'm not saying it like an aggressive way, like, fuck you don't have the answers.
I get it.
But because I'm also thinking,
can't we talk about this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we totally can talk about it.
Who has the answers?
Yeah. But the thing is, you can talk about it. Totally. Saying that... this is a racist thing. You don't have to go, I will never say that again.
Yep.
That person is talking to you and educating you. So what do you do when somebody's teaching you something? If I came in and did a blogging workshop, you go, thank you for taking the time to teach me about how to do this, right?
Yep.
If we started looking at our interactions with people in that way, thank you for educating me on what your life is like as a trans person, or what your life is like as a millennial or a boomer or whatever. Thank you for taking the time to do that. You don't have to agree with the person, but if you're going to have a respectful dialogue and not be a cunt about it, then you just sit there and go, thank you for taking the time, and you respect that person by listening to what they're saying and having a conversation like we did before. And that's what I don't see online. I see a lot of people going...
You've just said something really different. You've said something really different that's really easy to accept. You've said, you've said it from the boomer point of view or from the older person's point of view, but what you're saying from the millennials' point of view is, I'm just telling you how it is for me.
Yeah.
Whereas that's not often what the argument is online.
But a trans person gets to decide what is transphobic, and they've told us. So when I say, hey, this position of like women in sport, right? If I say this is a position this is a transphobic position.
Yep.
What I'm saying is the reason why it's transphobic is trans people have explained to us that the reason why this is a transphobic position is it goes from the view that you are not born trans.
So what about the response from the cisgender women competing in those same sports that are saying this is unfair, this is not okay? Why don't we also accept if the transgender woman can say this is transphobic because, why can't the cisgender woman say this is inappropriate and unfair because, and we accept that in the same way?
No, because they can say that,
Yep.
but it doesn't change that it's a transphobic position. It doesn't change that girl who came forth and is having a cry about it doesn't view the first two women who won that race as women. That doesn't change.
Right.
She doesn't view them as women.
Right.
That's why she's going, I got beaten by two men.
Do you understand?
Do you know what I...
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you understand, and that might be a 16-year-old cisgender girl, woman, female, lady.
And
But
also,
do you understand how she can see two human beings who have testosterone and not have any hormone treatment and still have all the body parts that they were born with, beating them and going, this isn't fair or right?
I totally understand that, but I don't see that process is any different for me as somebody who totally believes that gender is something that you're born with. So you're born trans or...
Let me throw this at you. This is something I found most interesting about gender. Oh, you want to finish?
Yeah,
You finish? Yep.
So it's just, to me, that view is no different to if she was saying it's unfair that I got beaten by a person of colour because they have...
So you're saying because
they're
they're
faster.
Because they're women.
Yeah, no, well, like,
the two who came first and second, in your view,
they're
are women.
Yeah,
This is something
and
that
this comes from the position of, if you don't believe that trans women are women, if you believe that I need to, in order for me to believe you're a man right now, I have to see your penis. Okay?
Well, yeah, we've never done that before in a
Like-
podcast, but it is our 50th, Jace.
But, yeah,
no,
right,
no,
get
Jason's
it
saying
out,
no.
put it on the
No,
table.
Jason's saying no. I
Yeah,
would, but Jason's
and
saying no.
This is fundamentally what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I want to see your genitals. So where does that put somebody else, like Caster Semenya or anything? What if I see your dick and it's not big enough for me to decide that it's, you know...
This is a bad nightmare or something's happened.
But
It's
do you
just-
know what I mean? Like, where does it end?
Yeah.
Do you get to decide I'm not a woman because my tits aren't big enough? Or, you know, to me, fundamentally, I see it as the same thing.
Yep.
Because I know trans people and I innately believe that gender is something you're born with.
So here's the question, right?
I've never considered in my life that I'm not a woman. It never occurred to me.
Right.
And that, to me, is your biggest understanding of what being trans is. Because if you don't think about your gender at all, I've never thought about it in terms of that. To me is proof that being trans is just something you're born as.
The evolution of language that we're talking about before.
Yeah. I
I think this is a really interesting. In fact, I've asked this question to a couple of academics, and they've been like, "Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it." So, and I think one of the like Jermaine Greer is a person who's falling out with third wave feminism.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, fair
personally.
enough. I get that because I consume this stuff. I'm fascinated in this area.
Yeah. I still read everything because I think, know your enemy. But that's a joke. I don't consider her my enemy. But it is that thing about third wave feminism, the reason why it bucks up so hard against intersectional feminism is because third wave feminists have gone through such brutal misogyny in their journeys as feminists that they have this almost, I believe this is totally just some random thing that I think in my head that's maybe not right, but I believe that they have a trauma response from living it being so brutally victimized by the patriarchy. I believe they have a trauma response and that makes them want to hurt other people. And they have chosen trans people because to them a man becoming a woman, which is how they view transgender. They view it as men becoming women so they can have, I don't know, I don't really understand what their view is on that, but they are angry about that. And they want to hurt somebody because they've been so brutally hurt and they've chosen trans people because trans people are an easy target. People will allow you to say
certainly one of the people groups most oppressed at the moment.
Yeah.
Jace, you going to jump in?
I was just going to say, like, I had something occur to me the other day, a little bit like that whole kind of like, check yourself before you wreck yourself moment about racism.
Wickety whack.
And because I was, for lack of making myself sound like a sad white kid, I was playing video games that was like a war-based one, and I had this really kind of like, that kind of makes sense when it comes to racism. And I guess to put what you're saying in another way that people can maybe understand, is, somebody coming back like an old white dude, like I'm not talking boomers, I'm talking about like guys that are probably dead now, they fought in the Korean War and stuff, and they come back and they aren't racist. To put that very loosely, obviously, but they don't like Koreans or don't trust Koreans because they fought against them and saw Korean people killing their friends in foxholes, and so that I guess it's similar in a way because they've seen these third wave feminists have been fighting against the patriarch for such a long time, and so they see any person with a penis as a threat.
100. That's it. That's what I was trying to. Because in my head, this is why third wave feminists and trans exclusionary feminists, they're obsessed with genitals, and that's where I think that the transphobia comes from. It's literally anyone with a penis. You don't get to come in our space because of your penis. Whereas my view, and the intersectional feminist view, is that actually there are many men who are deeply hurt by the patriarchy, so you having a penis doesn't stop you from being somebody who is deeply hurt and who can benefit greatly from feminism. That's my view, and we see this so much with young men. Being a young white man doesn't mean that your life isn't brutal, like the way that working class men, poverty, the way they're like in the States as an example with drawn into war and stuff like that, and all of those things are truly real things, and you don't get to go because you have a penis you don't suffer at all from the patriarchy, because you do. And I have 2 sons. That's why intersectional feminism is so important to me, not just as a woman, but because I have 2 sons, and them having penises doesn't mean that they're not going to face brutal stuff in their life. And men getting told from such an early age, don't cry, be a man, put on a mask, it's really hard for me to talk about when I think that about my sons and my father and his father and this generational trauma of men being told that they're not allowed to have feelings. It's really awful. Sorry.
That's right.
But it's so, you see how it breaks young men not being able to hug each other because that's, no homo or whatever. And it's tied into homophobia. And this is one of the nubs around transphobia, the idea that you having a penis precludes you from being part of a movement, that feminism is a movement that protects all genders. And it just really, I'm like, you can't call yourself a feminist and have that view. And that's my honest opinion, because I try so hard with my boys to teach them that being a real man, being a man is about being kind and showing manakian, and that you can always hug your mates, and you can talk at, look at our suicide rate for men. How can you look at our suicide rate of men in their 40s and think that them having a penis precludes them from suffering? I'm sorry, it's so, I don't know why I'm crying. It's just, I think about it so much with my dad, and I worry about my dad committing suicide. What a weird thing to worry about.
Do you think it's changed though? I mean, I think about, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I can't remember being at my school and hugging my mates and stuff, but I from university onwards, that became very regular and a normal thing to do. Do you think with the evolution of us as a species that kids at high school today are more likely to do that? Or do you think,
and I think
so it's slowly, with the evolution of society, does that therefore mean it's becoming less of a problem?
Yeah, I believe that, but at the same time, it's becoming less of a problem because we're fighting. We're fighting against this, and men are doing incredible work in this area as feminists. And these groups of men doing things like you know, there's this incredible documentary called The Mask You Wear or the Mask You Live In, which is about toxic masculinity and what boys are growing up with. And all of that work is helping to make things change, but it's not changing fast enough. And I think that our male suicide rate our suicide rate of men in New Zealand, that age group, I think that is proof that we have so far to go, and we need to keep working on this and keep doing it. Because, you know, talking about my dad, he doesn't have depression or any problems with mental illness or anything like that, but he's at an age...
How old is he?
He's 62, I think.
Okay.
But I worry about suicide in the same way I worry about like cancer or something, because our rates are so high. And, you know, I'm often checking in with him and going, are you okay? Do you have any anxiety or blah, blah, blah? And, you know, I think that he talks to me a lot about how him and his friends catch up every week and talk about their feelings with each other.
Wow.
And this is a new thing for him and his group. And he's actually a writer as well. Okay. And he wrote a book a long time ago about the All Blacks, and it was called Real Men Wear Black. And it was about... you know, this is what a real man is, and it was very macho. And I said to him, how would you feel if the boys read it now? And he went back and revisited his book and read it and was like, oh, I know what you mean about toxic masculinity now. And he wrote this really great essay about it, where he revisited that, and he actually said, you know, one of my boys does ballet, and he was like, real men do ballet, and real men talk about their feelings, and real men, you know, like, and so I see my dad, when I see his learnings, and I loved that he's kind of been like with his mates, because some of his friends, when they comment on his Facebook page, I'm like, fuck, they're so okay boomer. They're like
full circle.
Yeah, but they really like, you know, they're Trump supporters, and they're really like, and Dad talked about how when you're at this age where you're learning and things, you kind of get in this position of like, it's uncomfortable. Like learning and changing is uncomfortable. It's like, it's hard. Call outs are hard. Challenging and unpacking your privilege is hard. You know, none of it is really fun stuff. Nobody goes, oh, I love working out where I'm racist and where I'm not. You know, it's not a hobby. And I think that he got to the point of what makes it so hard for okay boomer types, because they're saying, it goes back to what we were saying, they still feel like you're saying you're a shit person and you're never gonna be better.
Let me ask you this, I'm just also going to check, do you have any hard finishes? We've been going for an hour and a half already. This is a time capsule, this thing.
Have we?
Yeah, it's 11:30. How are you going for time? What's your
I'm
what's
fine.
Your plan?
I'm getting my eyebrows done at 2:15.
You know, we're going to segue a little bit.
Sorry,
I
I'm
just wanted to
just
say
loving
something.
this conversation.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Before we disappear off, there's two things I wanted to add myself.
We're not disappearing.
You know.
I've got some other gender stuff, but
Yeah. It was just actually like, just made me think about when it comes to feminism and men being men and stuff. I remember David Cunliffe's comments.
Yes, I'm sorry for being a man. Yeah.
That was the most, I think in history, there's nothing made me more angry in a right way, not just feeling a bit self-righteous, I guess, but I was just like, how dare you say that? Because sorry for being a man, no, you'd be sorry for being that. Maybe if you think you're that kind of man, then don't. Yeah, David Cunliffe. And I was like, because men aren't that. The men are what you're talking about. Men do ballet. Men are compassionate. Men are caring. Men use their privilege of being physically stronger generally to protect. You know, that's what being a man is. And so, and like stemming from that, I've always thought, because to preface it, I'm a father of girls, but I've always thought that one of the most important jobs in society is to be the father of boys, to be a good father of a boy. If you're a good father to a boy, and the boy learns to be a good man because of you, that fixes so many societal issues.
100%.
If you've got good boys becoming good men, what happens? Domestic violence disappears, alcoholism disappears, suicide rates drop. You've got all these things by being good men, they show women that they deserve better, that they deserve to be treated correctly by these men, and they don't go after the scumbags, all the nice guys, using the right right kind of nice guy, not the I'm a nice guy, what I don't get a girl kind of guy. That women are then brought up as well. They're carried up by these great men because they're shown that they've got worth.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. But I also think, my husband didn't have a dad, and he is a gentle, loving, incredible man, and a wonderful dad too, wonderful husband, and but his mum is like this just beautiful, incredible person, and he was raised by his mum and aunties to be that good man that you're talking about. And about Cunliffe, that's such an interesting thing, because I loved the comment, but probably for the same reason that, or like we're on the same point about it, because to me, when I hear people say I'm men this or men that, I automatically know that they mean the type of guys who don't believe in male privilege, or believe that they're entitled to women, or whereas I think there was such pushback to that because people didn't understand that he wasn't saying men as in all men.
Yeah,
he was
and
saying
that's like again the whole
not all
the
men.
hashtag Me Too, and then the hashtag Not All Men, like rebuttal to that, like the white, like All Lives Matter rebuttal to Black Lives Matter. It's sort of like, no, it's not. They're not saying that. It's just that there's that kind of man.
And because I often say fuck men, I hate men, stuff like that, because my inbox is full of men telling me, that I should be raped with a chainsaw or whatever, and I
doesn't seem the appropriate use for a chainsaw.
Yeah, and I occasionally get people come back say, "Oh, I can't believe you hate men so much," or "How could you say that when you've got 2 sons?" Or whatever. And it's kind of like, I clearly don't mean all men. I mean that I'm sick of these men who feel so entitled to my time and energy, and feel comfortable with their profile photo of them.
The irony is that the people that come back with the hashtag Not All Men are actually probably be more likely to be the men that they're being.
Well, let me give you the example that kind of All Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. The reality is, people who kind of all like Blue Lives Matter, the people who do those things, is they've missed the point. And the example I always give is, if you stand up and you're doing fundraising for breast cancer, it doesn't mean fuck prostate cancer.
Yes, exactly.
It means no, we're just focusing on breast cancer for this moment. Prostate cancer and bowel cancer and lung cancer are as important, and they do need fundraising. Yeah. But just for this moment, we've chosen to fundraise for breast cancer.
Yeah, and it's whataboutism.
Yeah, imagine someone going,
what about this, what about that?
Imagine going to the door and saying, we're fundraising for breast cancer. Excuse me, all cancers matter. I'm not just, it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's a ridiculous example.
Totally, and that's that whataboutism thing of what about this, what about,
Do you have a concern in you at all if you, this is not everybody, but often kids rebel against their parents?
God, I'm fucking terrified my kids will be like...
You saw conservative parents in the, say 60s get hippie kids, and then there was a bunch of hippie parents in the 90s and 2000s getting conservative kids. And do you have a concern that your kids are going to be 25-year-old cisgender males who think XX is female, XY is male, and never the twain shall meet? Is that a concern of yours?
For a start, I wouldn't be at all fussed about them being cisgender. I would be grateful that they wouldn't face the horrendous, brutality that trans people face. But at the same time, that's not something I worry about in that example, because my kids have grown up around trans and queer people. So they just wouldn't, because they know these people.
What about being conservatives?
Oh yeah, that is.
Does that concern you?
Yeah, I'm like, what if they turn into like?
Do they have a bias of rebellion, and that's the only place they could go?
They rebelled by voting for David Seymour when they turn 18. And then you're like,
I know. Imagine
I have no son.
If I had ACT voting kids.
You're lucky. Actually, you're lucky. I was thinking about it that we're doing this in Queenstown, because, or else you'd be sitting in a seat that's had people like David Seymour. So that's a nice clean space.
Yeah, David Seymour's literally sat in your seat.
Yeah. No, I mean, I I don't know. It's an interesting question because I think I would be deeply hurt if my children grew up and were transphobic or racist or anything. And that's the same for any parent anywhere, would be gutted if their children grow up to hurt other people with their language or actions. And that's just, I think, any parent whatsoever. So if my children did grow up in that way, I would really feel like I failed as a parent to teach them about monarchy and
so you'd take that on. That's interesting. So you'd take that on board as your failure.
Yeah, I would.
But it seems to me that perhaps parents of the past, when they see their kids going the opposite direction, and they go, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Yeah. So that's an interesting introspection.
Yeah.
Look, I wanted to,
like always because I have I don't want to get too aggressive towards them, but I have boomer parents, baby boomers, and they have boomer tendencies from time to time. They post boomer memes from time to time. And so I've got anti-boomer memes with what is it? Old Economy Steve, if you've ever come across that one.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Old Economy Steve. For those of you who don't know, it's basically like a guy from the 70s yearbook photo, and it basically has a text macro over it saying, had only generation have it is better than his parents and his kids. Paid for university tuition with summer job. Made $300. Worked all summer long to buy his first car, Corvette. Anyway, I'll completely now. But yeah, so anyway, I rebut what they're saying and those sorts of things. And where was I going? What were we just talking about, Pat? What were you just saying? Because I had a point. And it was
about internalising.
I promise it was a good point.
Internalising.
Yeah, being introspection.
And
being able to look at yourself and say, "That's my failure."
That's where I was going. Yeah, like so many boomers, and to use the term with a capital B, are like, this generation of kids is so entitled, and it's like, who raised this generation?
That's the exact
who raised
point.
it? That's
so
my point.
true.
Yeah.
I feel like, one thing that I try to get across is it often really hurts when you read stuff like from boomers being like, "Oh, this generation fucking sucks" and all that. And I've been on panels where people have openly, sitting next to me, ranted off about millennials and all this, and I've been like, I'm a millennial and I'm sitting right next to you. And it's just kind of like, I find it interesting that they don't realise what that feels like, that they're talking about their own children and their children's children and all that. And maybe that's that whole thing of, they don't mean all millennials, like in the same way I don't mean
all men.
But I just find it really interesting because I really feel like being like, why do you hate your kids?
I mean, not to go over it again about when I used to work on ZB, but this is the exact question I would ask those late night, typically 60-year-old plus, typically white callers, and they'd be talking about the next generation, and I'd be like, because I think about being a parent now, and I see, and I want to get into how do you handle your kids' friends who you hate shortly.
Oh yeah, that was literally a news talk topic the last time I was on news
really?
talk.
But I used to say it to them. I used to say, so this child who's got such bad habits and like doesn't respect money, and where did they learn all that from in that 18 years you were raising them before the university?
And that's the thing, they just are completely separate from their role, but they're like that with climate change, and they're like that with. It's
interesting though. Like I just kind of going back. I guess saying we're the greatest generation. No, we're. I remember very specifically. I was in a flat in Wellington when I was a student, and my flatmate was a builder, and so he by that stage was a builder.
I thought you said a ballooner.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's interesting. Where's this
Let's get
going?
On, But he by that stage in his life, he'd done his apprenticeship and he's starting to have decent money. He was a lot more money than a student, of course. And he said, "Oh, don't you have any savings?" I was like, "No, I don't really have savings." And he's like, "Oh man, I blame your parents. Did your parents not teach you to save?" And I was like, "Yeah, they taught me to save. It's my fault I don't have savings. It's my fault that I don't have money to spend. It's not their fault."
And I definitely think of it as like it's a. It's like anything. It's there are things that my parents taught me that have been really helpful. There's things that they didn't that haven't been helpful. There are ways as a young person that I was shitty And, it's just that whole thing. And it's like some of the criticism of millennials is so fucking spot on for me personally as my attention span.
Have you seen
Do you love avocado on toast, do you?
I do.
I always say, whenever I see my wife in the kitchen.
Avocado and Marmite on toast.
Whenever I have my wife in the kitchen making avocado and whatever, some avocado smash on toast or with eggs and stuff, and we're just like, well, that's why we can't afford a house, isn't it? Even
I love it.
In Dunedin, they cost like $2 each or something, like $1.50 or something. But
yeah. But yes, avocado on toast. But also, I have a really short attention span, which is what they often say.
You must have seen that Simon Sinek clip about millennials in the workplace.
Oh, I haven't.
Oh, I got to send you that clip.
But it's probably accurate because my thing is,
I've got it bookmarked on my laptop.
I think if we were all to go, what are the millennial traits that we have? And because for me, a short attention span, I have bad phone texting etiquette. Like when I'm talking to people, sometimes I will mid-conversation check my phone, which is super rude.
Do you get, when the phone rings, do you go, oh God, who died?
Oh, I know. I'm like, how dare you call me?
What's really
and
awkward
voicemail? How could you leave a voicemail?
I know. You know what's really awkward is when you're on a podcast with somebody who does that. And like a person who insists on calling you and leaving voicemails all the time rather than just
I leave a voicemail to him on purpose because it annoys him.
Yeah. I cut off my...
I normally leave a voicemail and then I text him straight away afterwards. I do both.
Yeah. But I mean that and... things like I'm a real praise goblin. Like I like people to in the workplace. Like I think millennials in the workplace is a really interesting thing because people get quite offended, and I'm just like, oh, that makes sense.
I'm going to send you the Simon Sinek
But to me,
clip.
I do believe that isn't a bad thing. I think that when people talk about millennials in the workplace, oh, you can't work with them, they're so blah, blah. It's like they bring skills that, for a start, we know how to, make a PDF, like, and to me, it's really interesting that it's always seen as a bad thing because I might have a really short attention span, but it means that I can work on a number of different projects at the same time. It's just that thing, I guess, with like boomer elements. There's some stuff that like buying houses
or affording houses, more importantly.
Yeah, they're really good at affording houses, but they can't open a PDF.
I want to ask you one question about gender, and then we're going to move away from that topic, and we're going to talk about when you hate your kids' friends. I think the word gender, you described it before as something you're born with. I think that fits squarely and firmly into that idea of word evolution. Because, and this little thought I had the other day, and I'm really keen to investigate this. Like, I'm not talking about now, but like over the forthcoming weeks, months, and maybe even years, about what gender is. Because until very recently, and second wave feminism, which you may not be a fan of, and feminism in general, we'll talk about gender as a social construct.
Yeah.
Now,
actually,
gender.
As soon as you said that, I went, "Oh, actually, gender
hang on."
is a social
but this
construct.
is the point. But this is the point, and this is the point that we made to these academics the other day. It's like, hang on, how do we work this out now? This evolution of language, because if gender is a social construct, that means by definition it's put on us. So therefore, we can't be born with it. So if we can't be born with gender, and it's a social construct. What does that mean? Because that's the whole, I'm going to give you a truck because you're a boy, and you're going to wear pink because you're a girl. Now, we're not born with that. So what is gender today? And if we're born with it, it's not a social construct. If it's a social construct, we're not born with it. What is it?
And that's also at the core of why second wavers and stuff struggle so much with it, is exactly the reason that you've said. Because I believe that gender is a social construct, and I also believe that you're born with gender. And to me,
how can it be both?
To me, that they can be, because to me, gender isn't binary and it's fluid. And
do you agree with the kind of 71 Facebook says there's 71 different kinds of genders?
I believe
spirit, two spirit.
I believe that they're different names for very similar things. Right. So to me, I think that whether you are gender fluid or gender queer or anything like that is innate. And that's what I mean when you're about being born with it.
So does that therefore mean I'm talking about the evolution of language. Does that therefore mean the whole born with gender may actually, as we move through society, that word may change, that definition may change? Because to me, it seems that you can't be both. Now, that doesn't mean that I disagree with what you're saying. My comeback is maybe we're not using the right language yet. Yeah,
and I agree with that, definitely. Because I think, the one of the things that's often said about by people, transphobic people, or trans exclusionary feminists, or whatever they want to call themselves. It's this idea that by saying gender is something you're born with or anything like that, you're somehow saying that gender isn't a social construct. And to them, that is something that you can't say, because by doing so, that means that if you're a butch woman, that means that trans people are trying to make you trans because of the way you dress or whatever, and they're saying, no, I'm a woman, but I'm just a butch woman, and blah blah blah. And what they don't understand is trans people, genderqueer people, are pioneers of the belief that you express your gender in any way that you want. That's their thing, that we are very lucky to have been gifted by the trans community, is the idea that how you dress, what you do, what you look like is not tied to your gender. They are the ones that gifted us with that kōrero, you know. And so when we say gender is a social construct, we're talking about gender norms, like the idea that, you know, as a man you have to play with trucks
and have a sweet beard.
Yeah, you have to have a beard.
A sweet beard.
Or actually, yeah, a sweet beard. But also it's the idea there of, like, you know how there's, I don't know if it's like a thing, but if you know, shaming if you can't grow a beard, is that a thing for young men?
Yeah,
probably in your
so.
teens and early 20s if you can't get a proper...
One of my best mate, Chris, he doesn't mind I say this because he openly admits that he's been trying to grow a beard for years and it's still very patchy after a couple of years of growth. And he jokes about it, but I guarantee that there's an element of actual physical proper shame to it.
Yeah.
Not much,
I think as a proper
hyper masculine.
Well, I think as a proper adult, there's not. I think if you're a 35-year-old or 40-year-old man, because whether you shave or don't, that's one thing. But when you're a teenager and the guys around you, like I started late. Like this for me is like 18 months growth.
Yeah.
Like for most people, 18 months growth would be down here.
Yeah.
I think, but if you're a 19-year-old and you're not shaving, sort of thing, there would be shame in it then.
Yeah,
if you're a 40-year-old, not so much, because who knows if you shave or not, because you typically.
I guess it's more just, my point is, like, what I was trying to get at is around facial hair being an indicator of your masculinity. Gender as a social construct is, to put it very simply, is about saying you don't have to have a beard to be a man in a way. Like it's,
I would disagree with that. I mean, come on.
If you have, well, actually, a much better example is if you are a woman with facial hair, you're not less of a woman.
Correct.
Because gender is a social construct.
And I mean, you could even
I do it?
Yeah. No, look, you could even make it. You could even.
Gender is a social construct.
You could even make that a more realistic example, because women with facial hair, significant facial hair, is a small percentage, but who don't shave their legs or don't shave their armpits.
Yeah, exactly.
That aren't any less.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That the way you choose to express yourself in your gender, if it is a free choice for you, and you're not having societal expectations and pressures on you, which very few women, you know, like I shave under my arms. I have like this joke in the book about, you know, the why stage with kids, where they're always like, why? And my son said, why are you shaving your legs? And I was like, because some people don't want body hair. And he was like, why? And I was like, because they think it's better to not have body hair. And he's like, why? And then I was like...
You got to the end of your answers and
I was like, well, I am a feminist. I am. But I expect societal expectations around beauty dictate that I need to, you know, like...
We've had that shared because we're a 6-year-old and she's asked these questions. I was like, Mummy, why did Mummy shave her legs and Daddy doesn't? Why has Daddy got hairy arms and Mummy doesn't?
Yeah,
you know, sort of thing, you know?
And you know, like I'm a staunch as shit feminist, and I shave my pits because I'm worried about people thinking that I'm smelly or hairy.
Right.
Just be like that stereotypical, like, oh, you're a feminist.
Yeah, hairy, pitted feminist, you know. Like, I love it because often they will say, like, I'm a man hater, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, proudly. But they will often say as well, oh, her poor husband and all that. But the best insult of my husband was the best insult. He loved it. Was that he was a cardigan wearing green voter or something like that. But the cardigan wearer part like cracked us up for the longest time, because my husband is straight bogan. Listen, like watches MMA, listens to Joe Rogan podcast, would never in a million years call himself a feminist. And if anything is like, oh, this bullshit, you know, blah. And, you know, and this idea that people have that
he's a tree hugging, cardigan wearing.
yeah, and like, or that, you know, like, fuck, it's trying to get him to recycle is impossible, and it's recycling. What kind of animal doesn't recycle?
That sounds like a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah, we're completely opposite. And I hate, like, he will start talking about and Jordan Peterson. So he's actually really intelligent.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So where does he sit on this conversation? He must be, you and him must
we
clash or agree to disagree, or how do you do it?
Oh, it depends on.
Like, he must talk about Fallon Fox if he's an MMA guy.
Yeah.
Fallon Fox, who was transgender, breaking cisgender women's faces and stuff.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because obviously Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson and all that, they do this whole...
The dork web.
Yeah.
As Rogan calls it, the dork web, so that's what I'm calling
Jordan Peterson is a good example of somebody who says, I'm very smart, I'm an intellectual, and I have many degrees, and, you know, and it's like, you're not actually that smart, and you're often with people who are far more intelligent than you and have more of an understanding of the things you think that you understand.
Right.
But because of your level of entitlement, you know, and men will say, like, he's the most intelligent man on the planet right now, and I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, that's your idea of the most intelligent?
It's because I can understand where they're coming from, because I've had that thought cross my mind. It's really just because he's never come across somebody who can argue as well as he can. Because
that's not necessarily true, but yeah,
he's very. I think we had this conversation.
Jim Jeffries put him in his place.
Yeah, like he never gets emotional to the point of showing it. And he fights with what he considers facts, and so people can't, like, he argues in a very, very specific way that a lot of people can't, and so that's where he often wins.
And it's also the mythology around it, right, though, because if you look at some of these, Jordan Peterson destroys feminists, and you watch it and you're like, but he didn't. He came across as really socially inept and unable to actually clearly articulate what he's saying, you know. So it's totally this mythology around, you say he smashed a feminist when he didn't address any of the points that she made. He
probably looked like he won because she basically got to the point where he just boomed him and just said, okay, I can't argue with anymore.
And that's the thing. And also, like, when he came like the whole coming to New Zealand, all that, you know, people come to people like me, media, and people like Clementine Ford in Australia, and they say, come and do a panel with him. And I say no. And then he finds out or whatever and does, no woman will debate me because I am the king of arguing or whatever. And it's like, no, you're just not worth my time.
Right. So
you're not worth it. You think you're entitled to my time, my energy, and my experience as a woman and a feminist. And I don't think you are. I don't think you're worthy of my time.
It sounds like you also kind of take that position where a lot of climate scientists won't debate deniers because they basically don't want to legitimize the conversation.
And what's the point? He will never change his view because he profits from holding a view. He profits from making men believe that women are the cause of their of the issues that they face in society, when actually the patriarchy and women are trying to work with men together to help them with the things that they're facing. He also says shit that women have been saying for years, but people waited until a man said it. Like, clean your room. All these mothers are going, the fuck? I said that to you every day for 18 years.
Do you think Jordan Peterson, I'm sure everybody knows, but he kind of rose to prominence when Bill C-16 or something was, and they were going to enforce, you know, words that had to be, etc. It was about imposed speech.
Yeah.
Do you think he would have made anywhere the same noise? Let's say if he lived in Quebec, he doesn't live in Toronto, I think, but Quebec is French speaking. If the language that they had enforced would have been like, from now on you must pronounce these places in this French way, and not the Anglo. So in other words, the enforced speech wasn't around an issue like transgenderism, but it was around an issue like, you must say these things this way. It was a different, non-controversial topic.
No way, because the reason why, the whole thing about I totally agree with you around language, like changing terms like gender. But the interesting thing is that's what trans people are doing by saying terms like cisgender. This is actually helping us to better understand gender. But if you're transphobic, which Jordan Peterson is, people will argue till the day they die that he is not transphobic. He is, because to get that worked up over just saying that you're cisgender is such a weird fucking hill to die on, because nobody's saying when you introduce yourself, I'm Pat and I'm cisgender. Nobody gives a fuck. It's the fact that if you're in a situation where we're talking about gender or where it matters, like a conversation right now, it matters that you're cisgender and I'm cisgender and you're cisgender. That matters because we're talking about gender and we can only talk about it from the position of being cisgender. So that's why we're using the term.
Okay,
but
pause.
you don't walk around going, cisgender.
Doesn't it concern you in this conversation at all that I haven't identified as cisgender?
Yeah, I made an assumption.
Yeah, you don't actually know that, and I don't.
Yeah.
And I wonder
and
if
that matters too to me. That is something I
talked
care
about
about.
my wife, so it's an okay assumption that because I've talked about kids.
Well, no, because cisgender
but also
just
you
is.
can be trans
Yeah,
and
totally.
have a wife. And
Yeah,
exactly.
But it's an interesting thing because it's that thing around like you're being cis passing or passing as a trans person.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
mostly called truck passing as a trans person.
Truck passing?
No, just passing.
Oh, just passing.
Yeah, as a trans person.
Yep.
But, I'm straight passing. People assume that I'm straight because I have a husband and 2 kids. I'm not straight. And sometimes that quite hurts and I'm not able to articulate why very well.
Right.
Like the other night I got called like an honorary queer and I felt quite upset by that, like it hurt my feelings.
Well, because you consider you are a part of the LGBT community.
Yeah, and it kind of, the person didn't mean any harm by it.
Yeah.
They just assumed I was straight, and it's like I had to think a lot about, and I can't articulate now why that upsets me so much, but it does, it upsets me, and it's hard to explain why.
If
it would upset you, I would imagine, if you were trans, and I assumed, it wouldn't actually, because being passing is a good thing.
But flip it. If I would it offend me if I wasn't trans and you considered me trans? The honest answer is I don't give a shit. It wouldn't offend me in the slightest. And
if it did offend you, that would be an interesting thing as well, because is that rooted in transphobia?
Like it's quite nice being hit on by gay guys.
Yeah.
Because I'm a bit of a bear.
Yeah, you are such a bear.
This conversation too.
You would do so well. You would do so well.
So
do I have to bring up the list again? Like, there's the Donald Duck and the like all the different things.
There's so much we can learn from gay men in terms of the beauty in being attracted to who you're attracted to and rebutting societal expectations around how we look and body positivity and all those things. Like there's such a great warmth there, and it's interesting. I forgot where we were going with that.
The reason I asked this part of the conversation, I asked about Jordan Peterson and if it was a different forced language.
I just think that to him the problem isn't forced language to me.
Okay, because that's what I was going to get to.
I just think he's transphobic.
Because if it's not about what he's being forced to say, like whether it was a place name or a whatever, if it's not about that, then what does that mean? Does that mean he has to actually be transphobic to make this a bigger issue, as opposed... Because if it was just about the forcing of the speech, then it wouldn't matter whether it was about trans issues or place names. But because it is an issue that and what you're saying is it implies to his actual beliefs around the trans world. Yeah, I believe that he's transphobic, and I believe that being transphobic has currency and is profitable. That's my view. That he's literally profitable. Literally profitable. He's probably made millions, if not tens of millions, since those original videos. And I believe that's because he's tapped into men who are misogynist as well, and who are transphobic, and who want to believe that their victimhood is tied to other women and nothing else. Because in a way it's a lot like asking people to pronounce Te-Reo words properly, right? It is a racist viewpoint to think I shouldn't have to pronounce Te-Reo words properly. But is it a racist viewpoint not to pronounce them correctly?
It's just shitty, isn't it?
So this is the thing about the word racist. This is the evolution again of language. So, my 80-year-old dad, 80 next year, sorry, Dad, who we've gone to Mangawhai Heads for the past 40 years of our life as holidays in Northland, calls it Mangawhai, always has, always will. Even when he gets told, Mangawhai, WH, the thing about the attaching racism, i.e., I think less of you because of the colour of your skin, to not pronouncing that place correctly. That's where I kind of go. So what is it? If he goes, no, I'm not going to my dad would ever say this, but if he goes, fuck you Māori, or he'd go, fuck you Maori, if it was that kind of person. Person X, not my father. Let's get away from that. I'm not ever going to say it that way because you're wrong. The way I say it is right. Attach the word racism to that. That's fine. If you're a boomer, boomer, and you've always called it taupo, so you keep calling it taupo, is that just ignorant or is that actually attached to racism? And where does that come in the evolution of the language? Yeah,
it's because the fact that bigotry is a continuum. And when I say that we're all racist in some way, when somebody says to you, you're being racist, like it is racist to mispronounce Māori words. And I'm going to explain why before people lose their minds about that. It's because you're not saying you are the Ku Klux Klan because you say taupo. You're not saying that. But what you're saying is if you can pronounce camembert and, I'm trying to think of another fettuccine, whatever. It's racist to mispronounce.
That's the News Talk ZB clip from Marcus Lush the other day.
But yeah, it's, if you're able to do that, but you live in a country and you have decided that this isn't worthy enough of me to learn how to pronounce things, that is disrespectful, hurtful, and shitty. And so if you want to say that it's racist or not, like, I personally don't care if it's more a case of you are being told that this is the way to say something. And if it was a French person saying, it's actually camembert, not camembert, would you have the fucked up reaction that people have in this country when you say...
It's interesting because like that Marcus Lush thing, it really hit home for me because I am literally from the place that she was, the woman who on that Marcus Lush clip. I grew up in the Tairi Plains. Yeah. And I went to Tairi High School, which he literally referenced. He obviously knows Tairi well, represent Tairi High, with her. And talking about Opaho and it's because I can understand a little bit where she's coming from because that's literally how I grew up. As saying that word, and I still say Tairi, but I compromise a little bit because I can't quite program myself to do it, and I do the correct inflection on the R, so I do put the ri into it. But I don't say Tairi, which is the correct pronunciation. I say Tairi. But growing up it would be Tairi. I went to Tairi High, and I grew up, and we'd go to Opaho.
Can I tell a story?
We went to Oamaru on the weekend, and you're going to tell your Wingatui story? Or
no, I want to do the Wahingatui, which is hilarious.
There's no H in it, though.
There is. I actually think we don't give people enough credit sometimes. I think with the Māori pronunciation. So, I'm a wanker from Auckland when I moved to Dunedin, and that's how you just thought. And I lived on Tairi Road. Right, that was the first house we owned, and I remember, there was two incidents I really remember. First of all, let's give a little lesson for toe pour because it's really easy, right? Big toe,
pour,
big toe, pouring a glass of water, toe pour. It's piece of piss, right? And Māori is a very. I don't speak Māori. I've never done a course in Māori, but it's a very phonetic language. So Tai Iri is not that difficult. Tai Iri. Yeah. So I came down here. Close to 5 years ago, I remember being at a friend's house and talking about the trip we took down. We took a bit of a holiday. We went to Hamilton, then we went to Taupo, and we went to some places and stopped on the way down. And we told them, and I remember distinctly this girl looking at me from the, assuming her gender, from the couch, and she went, "The only people I've ever heard say Taupo properly are you and the weather person." But she said, "Say it properly." Yeah. And then I ordered a taxi once to my address, XYZ Tairi Road. We don't live there anymore, so it wouldn't matter if people knew. And they always go, "Where?" I go, XYZ Tairi Road. And they go, "Can you spell it?" And they go, Taie. And she goes, "Oh, you mean Tairi?" And I never correct her. I just go, "Yep." And she went, oh, you just say it properly.
Yeah.
And the thing that I learned was both of these people gave me an example. They didn't kind of go, that's not how we fucking say it. They were like, oh, you're doing it correctly. Almost like, oh, that's how, and I'm not saying yay me, fuck them. It's like, it wasn't that reaction of, I'm never going to say it your way. It was, they knew innately they were saying it wrong.
Yeah.
And they wanted to say it correctly.
It's interesting, like,
but,
I'm sorry, I was going to say really quickly, I've said this to Pat a couple of times. I've said it to me and my wife had a conversation about this the other day as well, because we literally live in Mosgiel on the Tidal Plains, and I was saying, I bet I would be very confident in saying this, and so this is two parts, so don't butt in anybody yet. I would bet that local iwi would say Tairi. Local Māori that live in Mosgiel, there's probably only about 3 or 4 of them because it's very, very white.
Okay, boomer.
Yeah, it's full of boomers. It's boomer central, Mosgiel. But I swear, I'm pretty sure that I'd be safe money to say that local iwi and local Māori say Tairi. And then I started having a conversation with my wife about saying, and that just goes to show the systemic, sort of not systemic racism, but just the fact that these guys,
systemic dumbing down,
they've had to change the way they pronounce their own language to fit in with this white colonialist society that's been forced upon them.
And why don't we feel comfortable saying that's racist?
Yeah.
Because it's about that language again around racism and what is and what isn't. And I often get people say to me, but it's really hard to say Māori words. I'm from Australia. Like, I came here from Aussie. I've got no background and also the other thing is, nobody's going to fucking punch you in the face if you say taupo. Because I will often say, oh, I'm going to taupo. Oh, I mean taupo. That's all it takes.
Big toe, pour a glass of water.
Yeah, but
real
that's
easy.
all it takes.
Yeah.
Or going tauranga, I mean tauranga. It's not a big fucking deal, but it is to go to just just go, this is how I say it, and that's it. This is how I say it. It's
kind of like as you know, as white, as you know, I'm a 5th generation Kiwi, and it's kind of like a little way we can say kind of, I'm a little bit sorry about the whole, the whole treaty thing and taking over your land, but I suppose as a kind of a little sort of token, I can say you pronounce your language correctly.
And because my husband is Māori and the kids are, so I have learnt, done lots of te reo courses and and learning tikanga and stuff like that, and I find learning language is really hard. I can only speak English fluently, and I can't speak any language fluently or well. I can understand people speak Māori, but I get very stressed doing my mihi and all of that, and I'm a public speaker, so I shouldn't worry me, but I get very worried about pronouncing things properly and all that, and I've literally never ever had a Māori person be a dick about it ever.
Yeah, I think most of the time.
And so I think sometimes people are like, oh, how dare you, and it's like, no, like, this is how you say the name, so can you say the name?
I think most of the time, Jason, can I be a dick and can I ask for some water? I'm just parched. We'll go to the wide shot, show the lake in the background. Do you want any more water? Are you needing a top up?
I might have some water if that's all right.
I think most of the time what I found amongst Māori who are gracious is if you give it a crack, they're pretty stoked.
Yeah, totally.
Even if you get it wrong. Pretty
and
stoked.
I mean, it was hilarious meeting I met my husband at 17 and I was just totally clueless, and he had a lot of fun with that, telling me the wrong words for things. So saying that te hongi was too tangy, he told me. Right. And so I asked, and he told me all these things like how to do things and that were wrong, and he thought that was really funny to fuck with me that way. But when I came to New Zealand from Australia, I distinctly remember this. And this is what I'm getting to, I guess, around we are all racist and on a process of learning and unlearning and all that. Thank you so much. All those things, and that it doesn't make you a shitty person. You're only a shitty person if you're not trying to be less racist or address your racist views. When I came to New Zealand, I wanted to make friends, obviously. I was like 13, 14 or something. And I wanted to make friends, and I thought I'll tell a joke to my first day of school. I'll tell a joke, and then I thought, oh, surely I can just swap out, and I'm going to use a slur for the purpose of this, but I thought I'll just swap out abo for Māori, and I was like, and that'll kill, like that'll be a real funny joke, and the joke was terrible. I don't want to repeat it. But I remember saying it and waiting for the laughter, and then just having these people look at me with horror that I just said something so brutally racist.
So that would be mid-90s?
Yeah. And like I feel this hot feeling in myself thinking about how racist it was and what I said. And
Just
in
thank
my
God
head,
we don't have Twitter as teenagers.
Yeah, but in my head, I was like, I don't understand. That joke kills in Australia. Because
I was going to ask you, when
abos.
you were talking about Australia, do you think that you see a systemic and cultural and maybe societal difference with racism in Australia to New Zealand?
Fuck yeah.
Do you think that even though
Australia is racist as fuck, like New Zealand's racist, but like Australia is just but I don't know. I haven't lived there for a long time, so maybe that's not fair.
Well, I often think that even though
I think every country is racist as a point. Like I know you're just going to pull together all
Australia
these clips of Emily writes, New Zealand is racist as bloody Asians.
Get your dick out on the table.
Get your dick on the table, and yeah, your dick's too small for me to consider you a man. Make sure you use that one.
Absolutely have a field day with this one.
Yeah. But do you know what I mean? I haven't lived there for a long time, but I believe that every country is racist. But I know that fundamentally my journey to stopping being racist, a racist person, and I mean that in that everybody who is white has a level of racism. Or there are lots of ways that people are racist, but I don't personally believe in reverse racism. But that's another track to go down. But the point being that I think moving to New Zealand was part of my journey of unlocking that. Because I was very heavily into activism and thought I wasn't racist. And I look now and go, oh, fuck me.
So racism basically comes from dominant to minority, which means we talk about reverse racism.
Exactly.
Therefore, if you went and lived in Japan, you could be the subject of racism even though you're dominant, in New Zealand. So that's how you would say it. If you go to that dictionary definition of I am better than you because of the colour of my skin, you are less than me, then reverse racism totally can exist in that situation. But if whether that works in society is
because you need those structural inequalities and oppression and the way that the system is set up, like that white. It intersects with everything, with white privilege and stuff like that. And I'm very aware of the fact that it's, I don't want to assume at all your racial background or anything like that, but it looks as if it's three white people talking about race.
Look at my ginger. This is Celtic. I mean, you can see pretty clearly what this
also
is.
Three cisgender people talking about gender. And that is another whole thing around, I've been an activist my whole life, and I thought being an activist meant, and being a feminist meant I was exempt from ever being racist because look, I do all this work and all that and blah blah, and I've learned, especially when I came to New Zealand, I had these real pushback around. I remember I had this really shitty view a long time ago about how in Te Papa had an exhibition and you couldn't go in if you were menstruating, and I knew very little about tikanga or anything like that, and I was a real fuckwit about it because I thought as a feminist I was like, oh, how dare you, this is body shaming, blah blah, and I've since, obviously, which is, as a New Zealander, I feel that I have to do, learnt about tikanga and learnt that the assumptions that I made were really shitty, and actually the process is about a deep and abiding respect for women, but also a cultural view that is as valid as my cultural view. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
totally.
It's just, I guess I'm just trying to say that we have all had times in our lives where we've looked back at things and gone, I wish I knew what I know now.
I think we're also, it's that arrogance of sort of our space, our place, our culture. And when I say our culture, I'm talking about kind of in New Zealand. We become so much more sensitive to how we should respect and accept things if we're overseas. If you do go to Japan, all of a sudden it's less likely for you to go, fuck that, I'm leaving my shoes on. No, this is how you do it in Japan. But because we live in New Zealand, walking onto the marae, you might put up a stink there, but you'd never do it if you're walking into a house in Japan. Because we're like, it's blasé. We're here, this is us, this is how we do it. This is my country, I don't have to take whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and it's just I wish we could have more open conversations about this stuff without getting so immediately defensive about that. Like, I think it goes back to the very first thing we started talking about, which is around if you have a view that you're constantly learning and that somebody taking the time to talk to you about something or educate you is a gift. Then these conversations are a lot smoother.
Yeah, I thought the first thing we talked about was like hamsters eating cherries, but maybe I'm just... Hey, look, I you know what I want to do? I thought we were going to talking about kids, hating your kids' friends.
Do you know, I love that we haven't talked about kids.
No, not
Nobody talks to me about all the stuff I really care about. I love parenting, but fuck, I talk about it all day. And I'm like, I have multitudes, man. I talk about different things.
I think this is the longest podcast we've ever done. Oh. What are we at?
Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
This is good podcasting.
2 hours.
Shut the front door. I'm so sorry. I'm such a talker.
This is what we do.
You have the honour of being our 50th podcast.
Yay!
So that's
so cool.
Yeah.
And look, I just loved this. I love coming together and talking, and, you know, consciousness raising was like this thing in the 70s where women would come together and talk about being a woman and what it meant, what it felt like, the particular struggles they felt as women. And I would love to bring that concept back into something we do all the time, where you come together and sit and talk and hear from people and truly connect with people. And I promise this isn't sandwiching in my book, but my second book is based around the fact that my first book was a very singular view of parenting. And for my second book, I really wanted to basically show that my way of parenting is a particular thing that comes with all the intersections and privileges that I have, and the way I parent's going to be very different to two mothers parenting, a mixed family, as in step parents and all that parenting, a Māori family parenting, someone on the poverty line parenting, you know, all those things. So my second book was really about this idea of what if you did conscious raising. Is it consciousness raising or if you did that in book form.
Yeah.
So everybody shares their story, and every few pages is a different story of parenting in New Zealand, because then we can start to understand each other and how meaningful that is when you are not where you are sitting and really hearing somebody and letting them talk and letting them understand, you know. And that's
I think and I hope, much like you're sandwiching in your second book, that's sort of what we do here.
Yeah.
I mean, we like to, as I said to you, I mean, I've written some notes, but I didn't have any notes to start off with. We just talk.
Yeah.
And then we see it's going to end up. What I was going to say was, I think that what we should do is I think we should wrap it up. You've got to get your eyebrows done in a couple of hours.
I've got to get my brows done.
Feminist you.
My feminist social
but
social standards of beauty dictate that I need to have my eyebrows waxed today.
You're obviously continuing to write, continuing to publish. Writers' festivals happen in the South Island all the time. One of the other things we do love about this is we're like crap media, eh? Is that what we call it, crap media? We don't care about structures and that kind of stuff. So, you know, we had a professor on a few weeks ago who's going to come back before Christmas when he puts his book out. And so maybe I reckon we should leave the parenting talk, leave them wanting more. And then next time you're in the neighbourhood, Dunedin Writers' Festival or Queenstown.
Or come to Wellington.
Or well, that's the thing. We're travelling now. We can just pick up from where we left off and go for another 2 hours.
Yeah, love it.
Before we go, though, I mean, you've said you've sandwiched your book, and let's do some official stuff. You're in Queenstown for the Writers' Festival.
I am. I'm tonight at 5:00 at the Sherwood, I think it's called, and people can rock up. There's tickets on the door.
Yep.
And
the event finder says 4, but I don't know. Maybe which one of the ones wrong.
4:00. Is it 4:00?
The event finder says that you're speaking at 4 to 5.
Oh,
There
good.
you go.
Thanks for telling me. I thought it was 5:00.
5 o'clock's when the drinking starts.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I have my book, Rants in the Dark, and Is It Bedtime Yet, are both available at all good bookstores. And if it's not there, it's a shit bookstore.
I've always loved that.
And
growing up, and it's like,
Rants in the
available
Dark
all
is also a play
Yeah. Oh, is it?
called Rants in the Dark.
Oh, nice.
And
Is that being performed at the moment?
yeah, it's just been in Tauranga, and before that, Hawke's Bay. And hopefully we will come to the South Island with it next year.
Well, I know from talking to a couple of comedians who are coming through, Dunedin Fringe Festival applicants are in by the end of November.
Oh.
So you got to have your applications in before December.
Oh, good. That's good to know. I'm very bad at
So if you're interested in getting that into, and then you could come back to Dunedin.
Yeah.
And then we could pick up with the important conversation, not all this fliff-flaff that we've been talking about today.
This fluff.
That's fluff. Hey, Emma, if people want to find you, Emily Writes NZ on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm really shit at updating my actual blog. And so best to find me on Facebook or Instagram. And I have a column in the Spinoff. Which
is that's prime. I was thinking about it. I looked at your page, and I think you've cornered the parenting advice, sex toys crossover market. I don't know how many people have got that corner of the market sewn up.
It's my greatest joy. My greatest joy that people either know me for parenting or sex toys. Yeah.
All right.
I love it.
Until next time.
Let's end on that.
That's all that. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.